Welcome to Season 5 of AIHA's podcast series, The Healthier Workplaces Show, where we explore timely and informative topics about occupational and environmental health and safety. I'm your host, Alarie Castillo. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with toxicologist Yves Alarie. Yves holds a Bachelor of Science, Master of Sciences, and Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Montreal. He has served as a physiologist at Hazelton Laboratories and an associate professor and professor at the Environmental and Occupational Health Department at the University of Pittsburgh, where he has been a department chairman from 1978 to 2002. Yves is the founder of the invention RD50, also known as the Alarie Test. The Alarie Test is an experimental method used to assess the concentration of a substance that induces a 50% reduction in breathing frequency in male Swiss-Webster mice. It is primarily used to evaluate sensory irritation of the upper respiratory tract and is considered for risk assessment in occupational health. Today's episode is part of our Luminary series. Yves, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for asking me, and I'm glad to do it.
Let's start from the beginning. How did you discover toxicology, and what made you become interested in the OEHS field?
Well, I was not a student in toxicology ever. I was a student basically who loved physiology. And after my bachelor's degree, I entered at the medical school physiology department and under the director of the physiology, 4 doctors. I was his only student. And so I was helping him also in setting up exposure system for demonstration to the student, to the medical student, about every possible area in the body of humans, how they work physiologically. And so we use everything. We use frogs, we use mice, we use rats, we use guinea pigs, we use dogs, and we use monkeys. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was very interested in was the reflex reactions, and he was huge on this. And so I was helping him in setting up those things for the students. Mm-hmm. And so the students, were really amazed about these type of things happening. That when you're exposed to chemicals, you're breathing, we human are breathing mostly to our nose. And so what happens to us is in inhalation, your eyes are exposed and your nose is exposed. And there is a nerves there in our body, our heads, which is called a trigeminal nerve. And this will, if you have a chemical like we saw that in humans in World War I, we call them tear gases, okay?
Of course.
So you're exposed to it, your eyes start burning, your nose start burning, and so you stop breathing through your nose. Now you breathe through your mouth, and what happens to you? Well, now you start coughing. And so here's the reflex reaction from the trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerve is not only in your eyes and your nose, it's also in your skin. But it takes time for any particular gas or vapor or to go through your skin. It goes through your eyes very quickly, and of course you're breathing in. Mm-hmm. So these are the problems coming through with and sensed by that trigeminal nerve. So that's how I learn about. We can use this for chemicals in industry, and this was done by the ACGIH. ACGIH was formed in 1938, but then the war came and they didn't do very much. But after the war, they started. And what happened is they were trying to give a safe level of exposure to a wide variety of chemicals in the chemical industry. And what they did is publish a number, like for acrolein, it's so much, for sulfur dioxide, it's so much, and so on and so forth. But this was never a law, okay? This was a suggestion. There was no question about it. And somebody in 1956 explained how to use this methodology. And maybe you can see this. This is
Yes.
his picture. And he presented that in 1956 at a meeting, Hygienic Standard for Daily Inhalation. And it's something that the students should read, because it tells you that we don't know 100%, and he is very good at explaining that to you. And so I did meet him in 1964 at a meeting. And so we became very good friends, because he was also here at Mellon Institute, which is in Pittsburgh. So when I became a professor there, I would meet him, and he was the teacher in my department, and he helped me really get that job as an associate professor. And when I moved there, he told me, "You're not going to teach. I'm teaching." And what I want you to do is I want you to update all the laboratories, because the laboratory in Pittsburgh was a big, we have all the what people call about UST, okay, obviously. But you have a lot more than that. You have Alcoa, you have Pittsburgh Plate Glass, and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of exposure to chemical of workers to chemical in Pittsburgh. So the Graduate School of Public Health in that situation had a lot of work with all the medical directors of these big companies, because at that time, these companies all had a medical director. And so there was a lot of things going on between the faculty and the medical director. We had a meeting every month, once a month. So this is how I started getting involved with it. But the way I got involved when I became a professor at Pittsburgh, I had been working for a company which was a new laboratory called Hazelton Laboratory. And there was 3 companies at that time who did toxicology for money. And I got a job there. They imported me from Montreal in 1963, and I started working with them, and they had a contract with the Department of Defense, in particularly for at Edgewood Arsenal, where they were also looking at tear gas and how do you test them, how do you find them, and so forth. So I was asked by my boss to write a proposal to the Department of Defense, to the Army there, and I did. And he read my proposal, and he said, "You got to be kidding me. You think this thing's going to work?" I said, "Yeah, it is going to work, no question about it." But he said, "Nobody knows anything about this." And I know everybody that's going to try to get that money, but what they want to do has never worked. So maybe you have a shot at it. And sure enough, I did. They gave me the contract. It was for 3 years, but it had to be done secretly. If you are here in the U.S., they send the FBI, but I was not in the U.S. I was a Canadian, so they sent it to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and so I passed it, fine. So now I can do the work, but what they were doing to do for me, they would never tell me what the chemical was. They would just put a number on it, and I tested it. This was the 1966 article, and this is what was in the article of how we are going to the exposure to mice. And this was the first time this type of thing was published, and it was very, very fast, because when you expose animals to these kinds of chemicals, you can see how fast the action is, and of course it's concentration dependent also. But within 1 minute, this is only 1 minute.
Wow.
And you can see how fast it is. And then you stop it and you can see how they recover. When they saw this, they decided to send me 52 chemicals that they had tested in humans, in soldier, at Edgewood Arsenal. And everything was, of course, numbers. I didn't know what the chemicals were. And I started doing the work. And it was then sent to them. We were doing a report every 3 months. And they look at it, and they were very surprised. And they called my boss, because they were doing other things for inhalation. And they said, "We would like to go and see what he's doing.
Of course.
Is that possible?" So he said, "Yeah, he's working, 8 hours a day, no problem." So they came. So there were three of them who came, and they brought in 6 different chemicals, and they said, "Well, you can test them, all 6." I said, "Oh, but there's no problem. It's 1 minute or 3 minutes, and you'll see it." So my technician were ready and go. All right, fine. We test them. 3 positive, 3 negative. That's exactly what they were in humans. And these 3 guys didn't say anything to me for the entire duration of
Wow.
what we did. They were in the back, and they were looking at the things that I've shown you, because this was all, you could see it. It's very easy to see. Very easy to see. So when it's positive, you see it. That's it. You can't cheat. So they went back, and when they gave us the contract, it was supposed to be for 3 years, but they didn't quite know how good that was going to work. So they signed it for only 6 months. So now they went back to my boss, and they said, "Okay, we're going to do it for 3 years, no problem, because we have a lot of chemicals for him to test." And that's how we worked it. But my boss was also very impressed by this fact that this thing was working. And he had a lot of clients coming in, And they wanted to see it. They had heard about it, and they said, "Can we see it? Can we go see it?" I said, "Yeah, we're working on it all day, every day." So they came and they were looking at it. They were looking at it, and so forth. And one guy came in who was the director of toxicology for Dow Chemicals, and he looked at it and he said, "I'm going to give you the best time, which is Wednesday at 11 o'clock." I said, "Fine." So and he said, "Leave time for discussion." So there was a lot of time for discussion. And then there were two people waiting for me when I got out. And one of them was Henry Smith. And on the other side was a medical doctor who was working for Kodak. We always think of, you know, pictures and so forth, but they also made chemicals. So he was there. So he's okay. I said, "Okay, I'll hit at your table." So I went there, and the table was about 12 people, and they were all from industry. So now they started asking me all kinds of questions further, and it was very nice. And then the person from Dow Chemical, I wish I would remember his name, but anyway, came back to me after lunch and said, "How about talking tonight? Because we give presentation tonight and we have practically very little, so you have time. People want to ask you questions." So I said, "Okay." So now I went there, and now the questions were really coming very nicely, and so it got known, and we did an awful lot of work. And then I got invited by the Toilet Goods Association. This is, for people who make soaps and all kinds of ointments and so on and so forth. And so they had a big meeting in New York, and they invited me, and I went there. So now we were doing an awful lot of work for industry at that time. So that's basically how it started.
That wraps up today's episode of the AIHA's Healthier Workplaces show. To learn more, visit the AIHA website and follow us on social media. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, remember that healthier workplaces mean a healthier world. Until next time.